Why is everything from Destructoid?
Because he's a Destructoid whore.
Because that's where I get most of my video game news.
Well, at least it's not Gawker. Okay, I can give you that. But still, it's just...
Or IGN. Yeah, I don't need that shit. IGN.
I mean, don't get me wrong. Kotaku gets, lucky sometimes.
Kotaku is the video game equivalent to a...
Here we go. Okay, you know what? Save it. You can throw it at me in the upcoming episode.
Yeah, I want to hear this argument go back and forth. This is going to be awesome. Welcome, everyone, to episode 17 of Ultimate Gamer Podcast. I'm joined with two awesome, wonderful guests. You know him from every other friggin' show that we've done, Kevin.
Hey, everyone.
And a newcomer, someone who's been on many of my older podcasts and definitely an awesome friend, Andy.
Hello.
Now, Andy has a very interesting background with video games. He's definitely extremely knowledgeable, and you can start off and introduce yourself, say what you have to say.
I'm Andy, usually called the computer repair guy or that guy. And I've been playing PC console games since, almost as long, if not longer than these guys. Since I dare say I started playing the NES long before you had one.
You want
I'm looking at you. Yeah, I do. In fact, I live my life like an Xbox experience. I want medals. I want achievements. And that's about it. I'm a very opinionated person who believes in the PC master race. Take it from here, Maestro.
Now, I unfortunately offended Andy, which he does not offend easy. But...
No, I wouldn't say so much offended. You ruffled my feathers, as it were, in a scenario where I have been called many things. Many things, and a lot of them are true. But a fanboy? Come on. I'm looking at both of you. I'm looking at you, John, and I'm looking at you, Kevin. Both of you.
What did I do?
When someone provides a point of view that goes against the grain of what the general populace of a video response is, it's not supposed to be something that's considered outright stupid, nor is it fanboyism. It's just a different point of fucking view. And also, Sony sucks. Continue.
Well, okay, we're going to start this off because this is a continuation from last week's episode. We were talking about David Cage.
Yes.
Your point of view on it. Go right ahead.
Now, personally, I don't think David Cage deserves as much hate as is projected from the general gaming community or from, let's say, I don't know, I am 16-bit. When it comes to the idea of saying something as simple as, with higher fidelity, we can get into greater detail on story. I agree. I must concede that the ability for a person, a viewer or a gamer, to fall into a story has nothing to do with the visuals and has everything to do with the experience as a whole. But what these people are trying to do are trying to bridge the divide of the uncanny valley. Is that so wrong?
No, but it shouldn't be your focus.
Exactly. Like, your focus should not be on the graphics. Your focus should not be... And even then, I'm sorry, but good writing is what writes good games. Not.
I agree entirely.
Graphics.
And at no point in my comment, which I asked the general public to look at in the previous video, to look at all of my comments, please provide a link if possible, I at no point say that is what he is trying to do. What I am defending is the fact that their push on technology is noteworthy because no other company is focusing on the capabilities of being able to recreate real life digitally. Now, yes, you have, the Final Fantasy bozos who say, oh, it's more supposed to be more about art and less about, actual good gameplay. They're trying to do something that very few people have ever tried to do in games. Like, have you ever played, outside of the United States it was called Fahrenheit. I can't remember what it was called in the U.S.
Prophecy.
Yes. Now, ignoring the second half of the game, because this entire argument falls apart if you take into account the second half of the game. Assuming the second half of the game does not exist. Taking the first half of the game, that was an experience. And for me, being a story gamer, and yes, I'm entirely a story gamer. I don't care how pretty it looks or how well it plays. If the story doesn't draw me in, if there's no, if there's no je ne sais quoi, I'm not going to be interested in it. The story, the feelings that they tried to portray in the simple little details that at the time, for the graphics capability of the platform that they were using, were limited, but even then, they were still trying to like go do something that few people even tried. It's something that grabs you. It's something that grabs your attention, and it drew you into the story. Now, when they focused on it, their entire project on that was focusing on the experience, as it were, and then pushing the graphical limits at the same time of pushing what the concept of a video game was. Did it work? Hell fucking no. Second half of the game, everything goes tits up. And it failed horribly, and that's why it didn't sell well. And unfortunately, a lot of people were robbed of a great experience simply because whoever the writer or whoever was managing this changed. You're going to keep throwing stuff at him, aren't you? I mean, there's no way that we could get this on the same level of, let's not call this guy an idiot. He's just trying to do something different.
The problem is he's trying to make movies in the video game industry. That's the problem.
No, he's trying to make stories. Like when the original movies, they tried to make stories and not just moving pictures to draw your attention.
Interesting in a film medium rather than a video game medium.
But we're living in an age where there's no longer really a distinction. We're getting to that point. That's the difference between old media and new media. New media is all interactive, whether it be a video game or whether it be a movie. Because our definition of static media it's no longer viable, it's no longer profitable, it's no longer usable. People get bored of static media because we have become a consumer society that loves things that change. We
True.
like interactivity, we like things that update, we like things that are fresh and new because we're bored very easily.
I agree.
I mean, now take it back to the original games that you love so much. I'm talking NES, SNES, Mega Man. I'm talking classics. They're great. Am I right?
Yes.
Yeah.
You sit down one day, you feel like, you know what? I want to play Super Mario Brothers. I want to play, I want to play Paper Mario. You put up your emulator and you start playing Paper Mario and you love it. But the thing is that you know what's going to happen next.
Yes.
You've played this game dozens of times. You know precisely what's going to happen. You know precisely how to get through this part as fast and efficiently as possible. It no longer becomes an experience. It simply becomes walking on a treadmill. Now, for some people, that's all they need. And you know what? Good for you. It's good to find something in life that makes you happy. But for people like me, I need something that engages me because I am surrounded consistently by media that is static. I don't watch television anymore simply because of the fact that I know half of the stuff that they're going to tell me since I already read it up on my podcasts and my news feeds in the morning. And at the same time, no one is providing anything new. Now, when it comes to video games and movies, these are static forms of media that are now becoming updatable. Now, if you can have a cross between a movie and a video game with the fidelity where you can no longer tell the difference between both, it's a new form of media, which we don't have yet. Wouldn't you like to find out whether it's interesting or not?
It's kind of scary, and thus that's why they call it the Uncanny Valley.
There you go.
We're
Now,
afraid to be that point, one of the...
The guys at Quantic Dream are the only ones that are actually visualizing this as a possibility. Everyone else understands and goes by the word of, this is a video game, this is visual media. Nowhere shall the two meet. One is one type, one's another type. We could sell this to these people, we could sell this to those people. There's no reason to try to see if we can merge them together. There's no reason to try anything new. Why? Because it's profitable. And there's the difference, which also comes back to the argument that I have of why you guys hate AMD.
No, you see, that's John.
Let me just put out the fair question.
Not me.
Name one AMD processor that's part of the top 10 performing processors.
Absolutely none.
Okay, my point exactly.
But is that the pure... that the pure definition of what constitutes something that's worthwhile in the marketplace?
I'm not saying it's not worthwhile in the marketplace. I mean, everything has its selling point. I mean,
Now,
you look at a cell
currently, what
phone.
they're trying now, currently, how they're trying to push themselves into things like the PS4 and things like a plethora of new mobile hardware. To say that just performance matters, that's just looking at it from an economist point of view, getting your bang for your buck. AMD, like Quantic Dream, are a set of corporations or a set of companies or a set group of people, a set of nerds just like you and me, that are trying to go against the grain. Not because, it's interesting to always be the outcast. No, it's because they seriously believe in what they're doing. Now, do they do it for the money? Obviously, because if they come up with a brand new idea, they're going to make shitloads of money since they were the only ones jumping into it. Like, for example, Google and their heads-up display that anyone can use. I don't know what you guys think about Glass. We're not going to get into it right now. I'm still on the AMD Quantic Dream defense.
Well, we also don't discuss mostly technology because this is like a video game podcast.
Well, here's the thing. Video games themselves are morphing into something completely different. So you may have to jump ship at some point.
Hey, when that time comes.
But anyway, in the end, my defense is that as much as you hate them for whether it's their previous work, their work ethic, or any bias that you have from it, because everyone has bias. You can't call yourself biased. Everyone has bias.
I'll explain where most of my hate comes from. The problem is I work for a company, and I'm not going to say what company it is, and you guys know where I work. Please don't say it. I work for a company that bought into the AMD shit, where they believe, okay, we can run a business. We can run business applications, and it would suit their needs, when that turned out to be completely false. They base their purchases solely on price, and here we are. We have machines that can't handle basic functions because they're the lowest point of the totem pole.
See, there, my friend, is a big problem because you're assuming AMD, a pioneering technology company, is meant for something like business.
They're not.
Anyone worth their salt knows that if you're going to use something for business, you need something that is basically a rock and a chisel. You don't need a pen. So you got to go with a rock and chisel, something that's tried and true. You go with Intel. And that I agree with you. And that must suck. Because I can understand the architecture of AMD is not exactly built for something like,
It's honestly the machines
business.
they're going for can't handle simple things as virtualization. It can't handle big ass Outlook databases. It can't handle any of that. So where and what I'm saying
and that's
is
understandable, and that sucks, and I can understand where the hate comes from.
Yes.
But that is a situation where your employer put itself in that situation, and you can't blame AMD for it for trying to sell the product.
But now, when it comes to this, I guess the fair statement I can say is that if you want the absolute performance, you go with Intel, hands down. If you're not going to expect the most performance, you can get by with AMD.
If you're someone who's willing to experiment and knows what they're doing, yes, I definitely suggest going AMD.
Because I'm saying you can get by perfectly fine with a mid-range AMD processor. Let's say their A6.
Yeah.
You could perfectly get by with it. You can use it
especially if you're someone who runs on different distros or different operating systems.
Yes.
Personally, I do most of my stuff on Linux, and AMD I'm happy with. They provide me the right amount of just, hacker love, as it were, that allows me to pretty much do whatever the fuck I want with my PC because I know what the hell I'm doing. But if you're looking at a corporate environment, if you're looking at a group of people that their idea of fixing a computer is hitting the bots, you're not going to give them a machine that allows full customization. No,
I can tell you,
something
we're not the traditional tech department. We actually do get down and dirty. We tear apart laptops and all that shit. Trust me.
You know what?
We're
Good
not.
for you. Thank you, because I've seen more than my fair share of companies that literally just give out positions of, quote unquote.
Can you turn on and off a computer? You are qualified. Yes, I've seen businesses that do that. But I mean,
unfortunately, I must admit that on more than one occasion, I have used the tech line of, "Have you tried turning it off and on again?" It's a reflex.
Hey, I've gone as far as to say, "Is it plugged in?" Okay.
Yes.
And trust me, I've had someone say, "No, it's not."
There you go. There's a reason for that. There's a rhyme and reason for everything. But anyway.
But in the case of, like, let's say this podcast, right? I would never trust running this podcast on an AMD. I wouldn't.
Well, it depends on how much confidence you have on your own abilities and your own setup.
It has nothing really with that. I mean, look, the way I see it is, like, a great number of repairs I get. Motherboards failing typically are AMD-based motherboards. I don't know why. There is a quality difference. You buy an Asus Intel
it's not so much a quality
you buy
difference.
an Asus
it's the problem
AMD, they have completely different components. I mean, I'm talking about like capacitors. They're using cheap shit capacitors on the AMD board, but
because
they're using the solid caps on the Intel.
And it's a given that AMDs are power hogs. These things aren't built to. These aren't the nice, clean running Honda Civics on the road. No, these things are like 1950 Pontiac Camaro, whatever you call it, the things that are loud and dangerous. And, you know, if you don't know what you're doing, you could lose a finger. They're supposed to be like that because they're built for the type of community that sits down and prefers a nice, quiet weekend trying to find out why the hell their set-top box is, sparking. You know, that's... That's the kind of people that, AMD is going for.
You're basically saying it's like a contractor that sells half-assed homes and says, hey, buy this house for next to nothing and worry about fixing it for the rest of your life.
No, that's not what I'm saying. I'm saying that AMD focuses on a market share that is very specific. Why? Because they're trying new technologies, new forms of manufacturing, new types of production. I mean, you're not going to go work in a company and say, hey, we should put our entire infrastructure based on AMD. No, I'm sorry. I have to stop you right there and say whoever made that decision either doesn't know the capabilities of Google and its wonderful ability to search, or just, really just thinks that the first person that talks to them is the person that should be trusted. No. If they didn't do the research and they got themselves into that little pickle, that's their own damn fault. Okay? That's like any American saying that, hey, there shouldn't be any more shootings, but you know what? Fuck it. No gun control because Second Amendment. Okay? We deserve every single thing that happens, and your company deserves every single problem that happens from buying AMD. So.
All right. Now let's start moving towards video game conversations.
Oh, yeah. That's enough with the hardware. Now video games. Yeah.
Because, I mean, as I say, the demographic of the show isn't exactly tech guys, but there are a few out there. But
don't worry, the power button is your friend.
Yes.
So I do want to add one thing, and that I am on neither side of either AMD or Intel because I own both.
You do?
Good for you.
Oh, that's right.
I have an Intel CPU and an AMD GPU.
Well, all right. Let's not even start that argument. We'll save that for a future episode because I'm a big fan of NVIDIA.
Then you would love their work with what they're doing at EVE Online. But anyway, moving on.
Okay, games.
What's first on the agenda?
First on the agenda is next-gen games costing $70. What is your take on this, guys?
Now, well, you should know that this came out of the mouth of Michael Pachter, someone who has no idea what the fuck he is talking about. He recently did a thing at the South by Southwest. Is it like a convention or something like that?
South by Southwest, yes. It's a interactive media summit. It's just a whole bunch of gathering of artists and such.
Okay. Well, he had a panel at this event for game trailers.
Which, to be honest, I don't know why, but I guess because it's the hip thing to do.
Because he has a show on game trailers and he has a bunch of dumbass fans who think that he knows what he's talking about.
Ow.
Wait, before you finish that, let me just say I used to respect him. I used to think he was a very well thought out kind of person. It didn't seem like he really was a fanboy. He kept rooting for Nintendo. He told it as it was. But lately, I don't know if he's been snorting crack, cocaine, or something, but he definitely is starting to lose his touch.
Anyway, at this event, he stated not just that games would cost $70, but he also made several other predictions, and I use air quotes for that, he started off by saying that the next generation of consoles will probably be the last.
Okay, that I have to agree with him.
Really?
Yeah.
Oh. Well.
Well, that's from a techie
just,
hardware standpoint, but let's continue.
He claimed on the Wii U, he claimed that performance to date is underwhelming, which he's right on that.
Yeah.
Essentially, he claimed that it was essentially a DS split into two parts. That it's not innovative enough to drive huge interest, but it's possible that exciting new titles will reinvigorate growth. I'm sorry, I'm fucking spazzing out today.
Don't worry, man. Just take it one at a time. Anyway, yes, I kinda also have to agree with him on that.
Okay.
I'm sorry.
Okay. Hey, it's your opinion. He then went on to the PlayStation 4, where he said it was impressive. He's claimed that the graphics are phenomenal and huge RAM makes innovation likely, and that multimedia features a mystery, but CPU powers allow huge improvement.
Okay, one thing I just got to get off my chest. Did anyone else notice that the PS4 event was as somber as a freaking funeral?
Yeah.
This is beyond the mere basic fact of, hey, this is, we're talking about a new console that we can't show you.
Yeah, I know.
Not because we don't have it, it's just that it's not finished yet. But it's not saying not finished with, it's not finished yet. No, it's saying not finished yet with the come hither look of, yeah, I'm going to give you something that doesn't exist.
Actually, I love how in the beginning of that event they said, we don't want anything to get between you and the game. And then what do? They show off things that get between you and the game. They start showing all this, streaming features and, ooh, look at you can do. You can hit the share button and, ooh.
Well, you know what? As for the share button, but the possibility of streaming playthroughs, that I can understand because I myself found myself doing that with some of my friends. I've watched some of my friends do that. And it's a bit of an issue when, unfortunately, there's connectivity issues or there's, hardware issues.
Oh, yeah, they're definitely preying on the fact that everyone's buying these PVRs where they're able to record their gameplays and put them up on YouTube. Sony's trying to capitalize on that, and it's going to be very interesting as to what they're going to do with it.
By the way, you don't even have to worry about because if it's just PC games, Google Hangout does it brilliantly. Better than Livestream, better than Ustream.
All right, stop being a friggin' poster child for Google.
I hate being the poster child of Google, and I'm sorry for this, but I'm just saying it because of experience since I used to use Livestream and Ustream religiously to stream stuff. But then I tried Google Hangout a couple of times, and I hate to say that I'm sold.
Okay, but what I'm getting at is I think that Sony is going to capitalize on this because they're going to put it somewhere where they're making the ad revenue.
Oh yeah,
because they're not. I don't know if they're gonna tie it to your specific YouTube account, but I'm pretty sure they're gonna claim copyright and all that shit.
I'm guessing to avoid the incredibly ridiculous price tag that is going to have to be put on the project of bringing up an infrastructure for Sony-specific hosting of video, like YouTube. I think it'd be much easier if they just tied in with YouTube, since it's going to give them...
They didn't go into specifics about that.
Yeah, that's the other thing. They didn't go into specifics on some of the most basic facts. You're giving them a share button, but I don't see Facebook, I don't see Twitter, I don't see Reddit, I don't see anything else.
Exactly. But now, getting back to the whole $70 thing, because we
skipped over that.
Skipped over that. But
prices are going to go up, people. Why? Because pirates are just getting that good.
I don't think it's the pirates to blame. Yeah. I mean, look, we're talking about PS3 and 360 games. They're not as easy to crack as PC games. They're not. You have to modify your PS3 of some sort to be able to play a pirated game. You have to modify your Xbox 360. Not everybody's as willing to do that as they are to just double-click on a crack and install that.
Weak.
No, but it's a true statement. Only if you are that serious about it, you'll do it. But most people, even myself, I don't find myself to modify my consoles. But I will double-click on a crack and install it in my PC game. And I think I don't think it's
Which, by the way, I want to put a pin on that as one of my plus sides to the later argument that we have in the same thread of why this may be the last generation of consoles.
Okay.
Just for everyone, as on record. Continue.
Right. So now, what I have a problem with, I'm thinking that it's the budgets have gone obscenely out of control for these games. And on top of that, they're also trying to say, well, if we got away with $60, let's see if we can get away with $70. And if they can get away with $70, they're going to say, hey, let's try to get away with $80. It's really a test. It's like with the Revelations. When Revelations was first announced for the 3DS, it was supposed to have a $10 premium amongst other games. And the reasoning for it was, well, it requires a larger memory chip to store the game. But people complained, and sure enough, they were forced to bring the price down to a standard price. And I think that's what they're doing with this. If it turns out, okay, launch titles are all $70, they're doing it to see if they can get away with it. And if they can, hell, if I'm a business, why the fuck would I give up $10 if I can make it?
I'm starting to think that maybe this was more of a misunderstanding, because if you're following the basic, trends, it would make sense that there'd be a small rise in price, but not something this ridiculous. I mean, remember, no more than, 10, 15 years ago? Or no, 10, 15 years ago. No, we're looking at 20 to 25 years ago. The average price of video games and video game systems back then were in the thousands of dollars, or almost $100 for a cartridge game. I mean, I'm looking at I Am 16-Bit here. He's the resident game historian.
No. The average price of a video game, an average price of an NES game was around I'd say around $40 to $25.
Really?
Yeah.
I was under the impression that the systems were exorbitantly priced. And
you mean the systems?
The system came out at like $250.
No, the NES was priced at $100.
Now, are we talking current day price or inflated back then price?
No, that was the price when it first launched.
We're talking about $1980.
I must be completely under the wrong assumption then. Anyway, from my understanding, that was erred. But to see that the price of games themselves, you can't kind of give them the understanding simply because, yes, the budgets are high. Yes, you need more people because you now have to do even more to make a game interesting.
Yeah, but they make back the money on launch day. Look at Call of Duty. They make their money back within the first week.
Well, these are AAA titles that already have...
Which have the largest spending, right? If it's a AAA title, it typically has the largest budget. Therefore, they have the most to lose.
Also, keep in mind that a lot of these AAA games have huge promotions and such. Like, remember Halo 4? It had that huge...
was it Mountain Dew?
The Mountain Dew Dorito thing.
I hate to say it, that unfortunately I missed out on the last cycle of Halo. Once Bungie was no longer involved, they lost my fanboyism on that one. And yes, you could have called me a fanboy on that.
Oh yeah, you were a Halo fanboy. I remember that.
I'm sorry. I like the story.
Says the guy who bought the legendary edition of Halo 3.
Yep, and I got the legendary edition of Reach, the one with the figurines. I have that somewhere in here.
And who skipped out on school just to play Halo 2.
You bet your ass I did. Oh, man.
Okay.
I've never had so much coffee in my life.
Okay. When it comes to this price increase, though, if you really think about it, the budgets haven't really gone that far above and beyond. If anything, they still cost far less than movies. I mean, the most expensive...
If it is... I'm sorry. Go ahead.
The most expensive video game ever produced still costs less than some of the cheapest movies ever produced.
The most expensive video game ever produced, I think, was The Old Republic.
Okay.
I think it was around $200 million.
All I know is Grand Theft Auto. Grand Theft Auto 4 was a pretty damn expensive game to make.
Let me double check that, because I thought Grand Theft Auto 4 was it, and then I heard a few months later.
Now, if we're getting into $200 million range, then it's no longer
far from it. Far from it. You would think it costs like that, but it doesn't. Just look up the budget. Let's say I'll just type in GTA 4, and sure enough, why is it saying cheats? I'm not cheating. They usually tell you the budget. The budget was. It does not say it here.
Well, anyway, the main point that I was trying to throw out there was, yes, maybe it's the budget, maybe it's not, maybe it was a clerical error on the part of this gentleman, maybe it was not, but This price increase is to be expected, especially on the last saving throes of a medium that's dying. And yes, let me be the first to state that video game systems and consoles are a medium that are eventually going to die very quickly. The limitations of the user by putting them on one piece of hardware and only that piece of hardware and exclusivity on that piece of hardware for the software that they're interested in, you're eventually going to, get people to not want the software because they have to spend far too much on that specific type of hardware that doesn't allow for any multiple use other than what is sanctioned by the company.
Yeah, the Old Republic cost $200 million to make, but keep in mind that that's an MMO. It takes a lot of effort.
Okay, well, similarly, GTA 4 was roughly $100 million, and on the first week, they grossed $500 million. They sold 3.6 million units on the first day of release. They made back the money they spent
also,
on the
Halo
first day.
4 cost $100 million.
Congratulations, they made back money on a game that they actually worked on.
Exactly, but here's the question. Why should it cost $60 a pop? They could still make their profit and charge $40. Heck, they could still make a profit and charge...
It's not just about making a profit. It's about making an exorbitant profit, enough that they could not only have enough for themselves, but then have money spared to throw out at other projects.
Yes,
that's how it works for these people.
Of course,
and they're always going to try to hike up the price. And you're right. They're going to try to get away with as much as they can. Why? Because right now they have to. If they don't do it now, by the end of the next generation, any game that costs $60 is going to have a bankroll behind it that is not going to be profitable because of the amount of man hours that they're going to have to put in, which multiply every generation due to the multiplication in magnitude of the complexity of every single game. For example, take a game that is a hit right now. Any game. Choose a game that is out right now that is huge. Seriously, choose a game.
Assassin's Creed.
Okay, the latest Assassin's Creed. Now, the level of detail, the level of complexity, the writing, everything that has come up to the culmination of that game. That team size, with the same team size for someone for when they made a game like Infinity, or when they Path of Darkness, would that have been the same team size? Would the same budget have gone through?
No.
With the same amount of hardware, with the same amount of man hours? I mean, I agree, and you make a valid point, and it's very clear that these people are just trying to rake in as much profit as possible. But then you also have to think about the costs and man hours and the technology and the amount of investment they have to put into these ever larger, ever more complex projects.
But at the same time, I would say that the industry is shooting itself in the foot and committing suicide.
Oh, yeah.
Because you hit that point where you're pricing yourself out of reach.
I mean, think about this. $70 for a game to buy a system that, let's say, if we're lucky, between $300 to $400 if they're going to undershoot Sony like they did with the previous generation. $300 to $400 on a system. So you pay $300 to $400 on a system, $70 on that, plus whatever additional prices you have to buy controllers, to buy extra memory cards, because they're going to screw you over the same way they did before, on having to install it on memory, on having to have expansion sets, on having to have peripherals that nobody fucking uses at all, but unfortunately you need it in order to run the game. That's how they get you, and it's necessary in order to have enough level of profit for these companies to say, hey, let's try something new. Let's try something stupid. Let's try something out of the box. No, it's not right, the amount that they're charging, but they have a reason for it.
Yeah, but then they can't turn around and say it's piracy that's causing this, because it's not.
They're always going to turn around and say it's piracy because they're not under oath. They don't have to be telling the truth. Nobody has to be telling the truth when it comes to the idea of saying piracy is destroying the industry. The music industry is better than it's ever been. They are able to create and mold personalities that everyone can gobble up because it's no longer about artistic integrity. It's about what the idiot masses will listen to on repeat and what they're willing to buy for 99 cents on iTunes.
Yes, I agree.
That's what we're living in. It's no longer the age of good music, or it's no longer the age of decent music. It's what sells. And that's the same thing that's happening with video games. It's no longer the age of good games. It's the age of what sells and how much we can get away with.
Yes, but it's also a big problem because that attitude only gets you so far.
It gets them far enough, and they're not thinking as far ahead as the average engineer who needs to think about the infrastructure of something from the ground up
Because
to, magnitudes of 1 to 10 years to, 30 years down the line, because you're used to thinking that way. You're used to looking at a situation or looking at a problem and saying, okay, I can fix this, but this is going to be a problem later on. So it's better to do this instead.
Because I've said this to Kevin in the past. I've said, look, their entire focus is not on longevity. It's on how can we make as much money as possible in a short amount of time. So instead of looking at, hey, can I have a respectable business that lasts 10, 15, 20 years, they're all about, hey, let me start a company, release a huge game, make as much money as possible, fire the staff, close the business, rack in all the profits.
Otherwise, you want to be EA.
That's basically what EA does.
Yeah.
They build a studio just to make one game, and then they kill it.
Or they buy a studio and then kill it before it finishes the game.
Exactly. Now, here's a question. For anyone out there that is a developer, why the fuck would you want to be a developer for video games? In that hostile environment. Why?
No.
Why?
I am against you on that one, good sir. I am avant-garde on this. Because now is the best time to be a developer.
No, because you're going to be job hunting and job hopping like crazy.
Not if you have a good idea, especially if you have a good idea. Why? Because of projects like Kickstarter, projects like these are developers that present their ideas and are able to get money from the people that would actually be interested in these games. And so we find ourselves in a whole new medium where fucking producers, the big AAA title, big houses that, produce and fund all the games that we play are no longer the mediators.
Of course, I agree with that. I agree with the whole indie movement. I agree with Kickstarter. I'm saying, okay, if you're a developer working in that environment, fine, it makes sense. What I'm saying is, if EA came to you, knocked on your door, and said, hey, you want to work on this project, would you just say, hey, why not? Or would you just close the door and actually make a smart decision?
Depends on the amount of money they would pay me, because I am a human being. And better yet, I am an American.
I know everyone has a price. I know everyone has a price. But what I'm saying is I would rather have job security over the risk of making a game and being fired midway.
So currently it is I think it's the best environment for. It's not so much an indie movement anymore, since indie is now becoming more mainstream. But you are right. Every person has a price. And so the idea of job security is not something that's going to come up to a developer that's, looking for a job. But I also have to state that in retort to that, just because someone has a price doesn't mean that they can't use the money that they get for working for an evil corporation like EA towards something better, or that it doesn't allow to other developers to open up even more avenues. I mean, some of the stuff that's coming out, not only of indie developers, but of new developers that are selling so well, they can no longer be defined as indie developers. I mean, I don't know. I don't think it's that as hostile of a work environment for, game creation and such as it was a few years ago when literally it was either EA or bust.
Oh, yeah. Now we're going to switch gears. We're going to go into PS4 talk. A company by the name of Avalanche says PS4 will outpower most PCs for years. Well, I can safely say it does not outpower my rig.
Okay, you know what? I would agree with this statement if it was made in 2004.
Now, please elaborate on this.
But it's not. It's made in, I'm sorry, can somebody check the date?
2013 it looks like.
Oh my goodness, we're living in the future. Where the hell is my hover bike? Oh no, wait, that's Back to the Future. That's 2015, right?
Yes,
okay, so they got 2 more years. They still got 2 years.
Yep.
Scientists and engineers get on that shit. The amount of RAM, the processing, it's all nice and pretty, and it sounds really incredible if you're a person that has never opened up the magical bots where they, get their internet webs from. But if you were to open up your magical internet bots, you would find that the average computer in your household right now is many orders of magnitude better than what these guys are putting out.
Of course.
Yeah.
I mean,
I'm sorry, the basic specs of what because they didn't actually tell us much of anything. They just said 8 gigs. Look at them, all 8 of them. They're all shiny.
I could put 32 gigs in my rig. Ooh.
And it's just getting well. The main thing is that saying something that has 8 rigs is not that interesting anymore. When your basic quad-core processor machine or an octa-core or whatever needs at minimum 8 gigs to be feasibly, useful or worthwhile in anything. This would be an incredible rig if it was made in 2004, because then you'd be thinking, "Wow, this is going to be good for like the next 6 years, man." And you would be absolutely right, but you're no longer right. They're pushing a piece of technology that is as backward as the rock and chisel in an era of laser beams.
No, laser
We've
printers.
evolved. Yes, we've evolved orders of magnitude now. And saying that, yes, it's all going to be dedicated to gaming is one thing. And yeah, they may be able to pull off an incredible amount by giving more freedom to developers on the hardware side, but it's overselling it. It is literally overselling it, and whoever did it should, get a raise, because they really raised the worst type of the worst type of propaganda on that.
Oh yeah, but they're doing this. But it's the same people that said, "Hey, the Wii U is great. The Wii U is fantastic. It's more powerful than PS3 360."
Now,
and then turns around and says, "Hey, it's not powerful enough."
I am 16-bit. I have to ask you: can you defend the Wii U?
What do you mean by that?
What is your opinion on the Wii U? Is it a worthwhile endeavor for Nintendo to have come up with a next-gen system that is finally actually next-gen, but whose format is, how shall we say, kindly experimental and, if I were hostile, stupid, with 2 O's?
No, I think it's a good system. I think they did a good job with it. The only problem is that right now it has a dry spell of games. It barely has anything on it.
Now, why would anything from Nintendo possibly have a dry spell of games?
I see where this is going.
Yeah.
And
the thing is to remember is that they've done this before. This has happened to them before. This happened with the 3DS. This happened with the DS.
Yes, and last time this happened, we had Red Steel, and I got that game, and I suffered through it. Okay,
it wasn't that bad.
Oh my God, yes, it was.
It wasn't that bad. Did you play the sequel?
Children cried, puppies were killed.
And this is coming from a guy. Now, this is coming from a guy who used to work at GameStop, worked through last gen launch.
Yep.
And you used to say you had more fun with the Wii than any of your other consoles.
My one issue with Nintendo is that they are unfortunately, and I spoke to I Am 16-bit previously. They
call him Kevin.
I know, but I like to call him by the handle. That way people can send the hate mail towards him.
But I don't have a YouTube account.
Damn it. Get on that.
You got rid of it.
I got rid of it. I'm free.
You have outwitted me. Anyway, the main thing is that they are a literal conundrum. They are a conservative video game company. Who knew that was actually possible?
Okay.
Well, I mean, I would say...
Think of it this way. They hate developers to the point of not allowing any third-party anything at all, because they don't allow their hardware to go into the market before launch. So that means that by second, it will take at least 3 to 4 quarters before the market has any third-party games, any third-party applications, anything third-party for the Nintendo. So what happens is that in every single Nintendo release, what do you have? 4 or 5 games that are, made by Nintendo, and that's it, and that's all you're going to have for the next year.
True. I have to agree.
How can you expect any form of media, any console in this day and age where people want choice, where people want actual good games? And no, I am not saying anything bad about Nintendo games, because that is a completely different discussion. What I'm saying is that their business strategy and their hatred of developers is the reason why you are stuck with how many games?
I don't think they hate developers. I just think that they're a little old-fashioned. Not a little, but they are old-fashioned with their business.
Which comes back to the whole idea of how the hell can you be a conservative video game company?
I think, because, if you think about it, they don't,
and by the way,
open to third parties. They
I'm
were
sorry,
open to third
just stop
parties.
right there for a second. In order to avoid this trailing off into something that is completely not, I don't mean conservative in any political sense. I mean conservative in the definition of the word, as in people who like to do things the old-fashioned way. They prefer what has worked before and are against anything new. I'm not saying anything
In
political.
other words, they believe in small changes.
No, they just don't believe in changes at all.
Okay, yeah, let's move on with that. But, I think that... Wait, what were we talking about before that? I'm sorry. I just had a brain fart.
Asking why the Wii U, how many games did we have at launch?
But I mean,
Why,
like, if you look
I only
at
have
launch,
4 games.
no, were there only 4 games at launch for the Wii U? I'm asking.
No, there was more.
There was a lot. There was like
5?
Hey, that's more than the N64.
I'm keeping it. Yeah, I mean,
wait, when you
don't
say
wanna
launch
be-
titles, you mean Nintendo launch titles?
We're saying
or...
in general.
in general, any launch title, anything you could get on launch day 1 for the Wii U.
Yeah, I mean, they had...
Because from memory, from what I'm thinking, 3 games. That's all I can think of.
They had Zombie U, they had Call of Duty Black Ops, they had Batman Arkham City, they had Assassin's Creed.
So
they
that I
had,
got. Okay.
what?
4.
They had Mass Effect 3, Those are the ones I could just think off the top of my head.
Okay,
You have
but we're still looking at a very limited market at opening for a next-gen system that is just now, after one full generation, catching up, which you can't deny the fact that putting into a next-gen market a previous-gen system didn't hurt Nintendo. So that's why, personally, I think the whole movement that they had with the Wii U is just, I don't know, the savings throw of another company with a Sega syndrome. So...
You see, the thing with Sega Syndrome is that it only affects those who get extremely cocky. Those who think that they could put out a console with their company's name on it or their product's name on it and that it will instantly sell.
Sounds like
So many-
Nintendo to me.
I'm sorry, but I got to point that out right there. John's got a point. How does that not sound like Nintendo? Okay, let's say they don't hate the developers. Let's just say that they're very protective about their hardware. Isn't it a bit ridiculously arrogant to not give the hardware out anyway in order to provide a larger market share and a larger plethora of games for the people that are going to buy it on day 1? I mean, why do we consistently have to wait a year to a year and a half to, at some points, even 2 years before the ball starts rolling on a set of video games for a system that is supposed to be something that you pick up and you're there? Like, it's there. You're everything's supposed to be done. You need to have, you paid your how many hundreds of dollars for it. You should have the ability to buy 3 or 4 games or 5 games or whatever.
Because Nintendo is still, again, they're still living in the, they still have the same old attitude that they used to have.
And what gives them the right to think that using the same old attitude is going to get them out of this? It's like the same people who think that doing a Final Fantasy game is just, let's put some characters, add a situation, throw some steampunk on there. These bitches will eat it up.
True. I have to agree with that. I have to
know,
say,
not-
look,
I'm
I
not
had
making
high hopes.
But
I had high hopes for the Wii U. Lately, I've been really starting to rethink it. And the reason for it is, look, I primarily bought it for first party. Now, I mean, any Nintendo fan does that. You buy it for the Mario Kart. You buy it for Mario Party. You buy it for Mario Galaxy.
I still have the Wii. I still I play it sometimes, and
Yes.
I've been thinking about getting a Wii U. And I have to agree, Kevin, the Wii U, the idea when I first saw it, it actually caught my interest. It was something that's, wow, you know what? That was strange. That was strange enough to gather my attention and think, hey, maybe I should buy it to see how it is. But I'm sorry.
But the problem was you have all these developers that, went to the show, said, hey, yeah, we fully support this. We love this. We can't wait to do it. It has high definition graphics, blah, blah, blah. But then they release nothing.
There you go.
And then they
think
come up
that's
with
another thing is
excuses.
that-
Oh, we can't release it because we don't have anything creative to put on the controller. Oh, we can't release it because the memory isn't fast enough. Oh, but we can't release it because the CPU is lacking. It just became an excuse fest.
And you know what? That's
after
actually
launch.
another good point, is that it also is the third-party developers themselves.
Because at this point,
No
it is
way.
safe.
Keep in
no
mind, yeah.
way.
Yeah, because they kept it going on and on, giving glorious reviews of the Wii U, saying, "Oh, it's an amazing system."
What else are they going to do? There's no one else to work with. It's either them, Sony, or freaking Microsoft. Of course they're going to say rave reviews because they love new toys. But the moment you start looking at the specifics, just like everyone was astounded when they said 8 gigs of RAM on the Sony, now we look back and think, without rose-colored glasses and think, yeah, that's really not that great.
But they did the same thing with the Wii.
Of course they're going to do the same thing with the Wii. What happens if a developer goes up and says, "Oh yeah, that's a nice system, but I'm not going to do anything for it because it's a piece of crap"? Of course, no developer in their right mind is ever going to be publicly state, "Hey, this system is not something that is worthwhile for my company." They're going to sing high praises because everyone wants to be that first developer that Nintendo graces with their hand from above. Why? Because Nintendo still has the pedigree. And you're winning on.
Here's a legitimate question for the both of you. Why is it that we're not having triple release titles? You remember back in the good old days on the GameCube, you would have Need for Speed released on PlayStation 2, Xbox, GameCube. Need for Speed this generation, PS3, 360, PC. Oh, there's one missing. Nintendo. Why isn't that these games, if they're powerful, if the game can run on a PS3 and it can run on an Xbox 360, why isn't it not coming out on the Wii U? The Wii U has proven that it can run games from that generation. It can. But why isn't it being released for it? You look at Madden. They created a brand new engine that's running on a PS3, that's running on a 360, but they're using the old engine for the Wii U.
I could give you an answer,
Go ahead.
No one who views your videos is going to like it.
What? Go ahead.
The people that are responsible for that happening specifically, gamers.
Elaborate. Go ahead.
It's your own damn fault. Now, exclusivity was bred first in the, the next-gen consoles, or the first next-gen consoles. We're looking at, back when PS3, Xbox 360, what was it? Was it the Wii? Meh. Who remembers? The main thing is that these consoles liked the idea of exclusivity since it hadn't done before, and so they said, hey, look at this. This game sells really well. People really like this. This has become a high-value IP, and it's only available on this. That immediately struck the market, and every company said, we should do the same. So, what do you have? You have memorable IPs from Sony. Ratchet and Clank, Jak and Daxter. You know what I'm talking about, right?
Yes.
And then you have the homegrown IPs from Nintendo that no one will ever be able to touch from a distance.
True.
The magical ones. The Marios, the Zeldas, the Super Smash Brothers. Everything that has to do with the Nintendo universe, exclusivity. And exclusivity forces fanboyism. And fanboyism melds the market. Fanboyism moves the market and says this is going to sell and this is not going to sell because of the wrath of the fanboys and gals, for those people who really think that's important. And that's what happens. The only reason that triple titles, for titles that span across all platforms, no longer exist as commonly as they used to, is because companies are not so much forced but seduced into the idea of developing for a single platform because it provides them exclusivity and it provides them the guarantee of sales. Why? Because if you got the power of the Sony fanboys behind you, you're set. If you got the power of the Nintendo fanboys behind you, you're set. You got the power of the Xbox bigots, you're set. And it's a true market fact, and that's what sells. That's how you get your Call of Duties. That's how you get your Modern Warfare. That's how you get that to sell so well. Not because it's a good game, not because people are thinking, hey, we should probably provide this for multi-platform since it's just a general good experience. No, it's what sells, which we go back to the previous conversation we were having about 30 seconds ago.
Yes.
You want to know the reason why you no longer see those titles? Because you wouldn't buy them. You wanted to buy them on the Xbox. You didn't want to buy them on the PC, or you didn't want to buy them on any other console because you fanaticized and you only bought for that console which you got.
It's true, because I'm guilty of that. With the Wii U, I never intended on buying multi-platform games for it.
There you go.
I figured if it was on the PC, I'm buying it for PC hands down. Look at BioShock Infinite. Even if the game came out on the Wii U, I would still pick the PC version over it.
And there's also the problem of capability. Are you going to want to play a game on the Wii U, or are you going to want to play a game on the 360? Only taking into account the previous experiences you've had with games that have been exclusive to each one.
No, the Wii U actually has better graphics.
No, I'm not talking about. I'm talking about your personal view. So your personal view is you've had more fun on the Wii U, so you're going to buy something for the Wii U over buying something for the 360.
Okay, now you're getting into more details, because then at that same token, for instance, Call of Duty Black Ops 2, I think I should have just bought it on the PS3 because I have my friends on the PS3. It's a familiar territory. It's something where I have a community that's already established.
Community is bred from fanboyism, from fanaticism, from the need to always keep everything centralized. And hey, I'm an engineer. I love centralization. But when it comes to the modus operandi of the buyer, of the people who have the money that are going to put towards buying a game, you're going to buy it to familiarity. You're not going to buy it over quality or quantity. You're buying to what is more comfortable to you. Correct?
Yes.
And because of that comfort, it's bred from idolization, it's bred from fanaticism. So it's not so much a price problem or an economical problem or even a technological problem. Your one issue for how the entire marketplace is melding and turning into this fractured, distortion of what it was before is because of corporate culture being able to mold what you want to what you need to, not letting you tell the difference. And it sounds hippie-ish and it sounds, horrible coming from me, a person who lives off corporate technology at this point, because it's no longer personal computer problems that I solve. It's corporate issue problems. But it's the truth. And that's why, this is the last generation of console gaming. This is the last time we have decentralization of, consumable media.
Well, they're all going towards an x86 platform. It's a fucking PC, just a lower-end version.
There you go.
So the next step is logically, well, all these games, we're developing it on PCs for these consoles. Why don't we just fuck the consoles and just produce it for the PC?
Which gets into the area of the Steam bots and why I think that's basically the beginning of the end, and, why I find it hilarious that Microsoft keeps flinging their own, whatever at Valve for even conceiving of the idea of coming up with its own hardware.
Well, the interesting thing is that Microsoft wins if the consoles lose. As long as they can hold their own against Linux, which right now we're seeing the beginning of Linux as a viable video game platform.
Not to mention Android.
Well, even Android. But if Microsoft is able to hold their own against Linux, Microsoft wins.
Microsoft has more money behind it, so obviously if it comes into
they're
a battle...
They're the de facto OS for PCs. They win.
Unfortunately, yeah.
So now, before we get on the Steam box, since you're on this show, and this is something that's been very difficult to get you on the show, what is your take on the possibility of a video game crash?
A video game crash? You're talking about the end of consoles.
No.
We're talking a repeat of what happened in the early 80s.
You're talking about like the dark ages of video games.
We're talking 83 to 85.
Ooh, not good years. You know what? No, I don't think that's going to happen. I don't think that's actually possible for that to happen.
Why?
Because back then, that was truly just coming up with a product that can sell. Nowadays, it's not so much of a product that can sell, but a product that has amicability towards the, I don't know, because we've unfortunately grown. The average gamer is no longer just this, just a graphics or just a story. It's kind of like an all-around thing. Going back to the whole Quantic Dream defense, it's not so much whether it looks pretty, it's what grabs you. So when it comes to, once again, touching back on the indie developers, we've kind of like created this, this protective gooey coating of freelancers and indie developers and such, that no matter how bad the mainstream may get when it comes to sales or when it comes to popularity of video games, you're always going to have that delicious protective coating of, made of, I don't know, some type of, made of melted Skittles or whatever. That is just, really good stuff.
Well, you see, that's the thing. That's what happened in the game crashes. That even though the console industry, even though the big budgeted console industry was destroyed, okay, you still had PC developers going on, especially independent developers.
But back then, you didn't have a resource like the internet. You didn't have telecommunications to the level that we
I have to say that definitely does change things.
Not to mention, we didn't have the culture for it. Back then, video games were considered just toys. Nowadays, I don't care whether you accept it or not, video games are considered a form of art and a form of media that are consumable by any person at any age.
True. The average gamer is 35.
Yeah.
I can actually say proudly that my own mother is a gamer. Not a hardcore gamer, mind you. She didn't jump into the, but, she can hold her own in Halo.
That's awesome.
And we're looking at that now. We're looking at no longer having the majority of the populace, the majority of the buying public saying, oh, no, that's for kids, or, oh, no, I don't like them computers. No, we're looking at a general populace that is willing to put their money towards a computer or towards a new gadget over, a new piece of furniture. Why? Because you get more out of a piece of technology than you do get out of like some, static purchase. So the crash happened because the populace wasn't there. You couldn't sell it, even though it did survive. And thanks to that era of indie PC developers is the reason why video games came back with such force.
Yeah.
I mean, the crash, if it happens, it'll happen no matter what we do. But we're no longer looking at an era. Things aren't happening as slow as they used to. You don't have years or dark ages anymore. If something goes down, it's down for 6 months, and then it comes back up. Why? We're faster. We're smarter. We're more connected. It's impossible for any industry to be utterly destroyed unless a new industry is created that completely annihilates it. For example, print media. As bad as print media is doing, it's still alive. Digital print media is kicking its ass. And eventually we're going to get to the point where, I don't have any pieces of paper in my house because everything is digital. I haven't had to print anything out in the last 4 years. Nothing. That's the type, and I'm one of those crazy early adopters of everything. I was the one kid back in high school who was trying to turn my entire house digital because, not only does it save money, but, save the trees or whatever other environmental bullshit I was believing back then. Nowadays, this is becoming more and more of a thing. People are typing more than they're writing. They're, blogging or reading Twitters or tumbling more than they are reading a newspaper. The loss of something like it happened back in the 80s is damn near impossible.
But you will see EA and the big players losing big.
Oh my God, if only. If only.
What do you mean?
I have a personal grudge against companies like EA that consistently only use their wealth in order to shape the environment of the market for their own benefit. Not for the benefit of developers, not for the benefit of IPs, not for the benefit of the gamers themselves. You guys have said it yourself. When people are actively just buying up studios to close them down, not even to just to close them down, that's the worst type of monopolizing.
Exactly. It's just this big kid playing around in his sandbox, stomping around.
Like I said last week, EA is the Death Star of the video game industry.
Exactly. That's the perfect
analogy. They go
around
and they just pick any game developer they hone in on them and then destroy them.
But eventually, even the Death Star has a very, very oddly placed heating port. So we can only hope that, the tides of the market bring an X-Wing. That's what I'm saying.
I think indie developer, the whole indie movement, right now it's still small, but it is growing exponentially.
Yeah.
I have a feeling that it will be the death of EA and all large publishers.
For example, speaking on behalf of indie games, I haven't played a AAA title in the past year and a half or so. The majority of the titles that I play, well, I don't think EVE Online could be considered a AAA title, but that's just something that I do in my pastime. Have you guys heard of a game called Kerbal Space Program?
No.
Okay. It's this little company called Squad, and they've made a simulator that allows you to build from the ground up an entire space program. You need to work out the mathematics of putting something into orbit, getting up satellites. This game is so little known, it has only, a few thousand followers, and whoever is listening and knows about Kerbal Space Program will get the reference to Jebediah Kerman and such, and yes, that's great, but it's a capsulated, small community, but this is a game that grabs you. I haven't stopped playing it, and the moment that I posted it to some of my friends in Sweden, in Canada, it spread like wildfire. And it's games like this that have been catching my interest for the past couple of years because, things like Super Meat Boy,
Super Meat Boy's great.
Exactly. And it's an indie developer, and it's a game that you can consistently play over and over. For example, FTL. Have you guys played FTL?
I've heard of it.
It's on Steam. I definitely suggest you buy it. It's a great game. A friend of mine got it for me. Thank you, Joe. You're cool. Actually, I can't remember if it was Joe. Fuck. It was one of my many awesome friends that unfortunately I cannot name them all because it'd take too long. No, I'm not that popular. I just have horrible memory.
Okay, Kerbal Space Program looks like something like Oddworld's Munchie's Odyssey.
It has a beautiful type of humor, and it has absolutely no writing. It's one of those weird games where the entire story is based on the mechanics of the game. Like right now, as we're talking, I have a small satellite orbiting a moon on my home planet, and I'm both running a scan for this is adding a bunch of mods, which, by the way, the modding community. Before, when we used to have AAA titles from PC or even indie titles, the modding community was something of an oddity. Nowadays, every single game embraces the idea of a modding community. This game becomes only better with the mods because Squad allows the game to be openly accessible to anyone who wants to, start modding. Now, I'm able to do something like this right now where I have a camera on a set trying to detect Kethane or Kethane or whatever they call it, at the same time doing a radiological scan and all that. And it's very immersive. And for any other person, it just sounds like a whole bunch of geeky dribble. But you take an average person, you sit them down, and you play this. In a matter of hours, they're going to be talking about delta V. They're going to be talking about optimal orbital efficiency. They're going to be talking about this because it is that engaging of a game. So what happens when you have these games that are small little nuggets of awesome that are either cheap or free compared to AAA titles that are great for the masses, but when you come down to it, after you've played it for an hour, you've played the game.
Resident Evil 6.
Yeah.
I've avoided that. I don't know. I'm not going to say anything.
Hey, look, it took Kevin 5 minutes for him to throw the controller and say, fuck this.
I played, all I did was play the prologue, which is like the first chapter, and I fucking hated it. I was like, this game is a piece.
When you have to tap X repeatedly to remove a piece of wood from a door, that is
not just that. You need to go into a quick time event just to open up a window. just to something that was so easy that you could do in Resident Evil 4. You now have to do a stupid little quick time event just to bust open a window.
But that's AAA games these days.
Yeah.
That's really what it has become. Like, you look at any game. You look at like Gears of War. They have quick time events. You look at anything.
When it comes to gaming, it's gone to the point where every major game is stealing ideas from other games.
No, they aren't stealing ideas anymore. They're just recycling. Recycle.
Oh, Either way, there's reusing ideas.
Rinse, reuse.
Exactly. I mean, look at the new Tomb Raider. What does that look like to you?
Actually,
it looks like Uncharted.
Well, yeah, it does look like Uncharted, but according to a few people that I trust their opinion, they say that the new Tomb Raider game is actually worthwhile. It is not like a carbon copy of the previous Tomb Raiders, and it's actually interesting. If, you don't take into account the subtitles, which for some reason consistently state speaking in Russian, in quotations. It's like, I know he's speaking in Russian, I would assume you provide a translation, but no. I digress.
But like every first-person shooter is trying to be the next Call of Duty. Every RPG game is trying to be like Mass Effect, and I think that's
because that's what sells.
Well, exactly. But when you don't have, what's the word I'm looking for? When you don't have variety, the industry starts getting stagnant.
Yes,
it's already stagnant.
And exactly, that's what's happening right now. It's just stagnant. There's no originality, and from what I see on the indie market, there's a shit ton of originality.
Yep.
I mean, the one game that me and John here have mentioned before on the podcast, Cryamore, it looks awesome. Have you heard about that?
No, I have not.
Oh, dude. Look it up. It was one of the games that was on Kickstarter. And it's like this... It's... I don't know how to describe it, but like it's
striving to take the best of Metroid, Zelda, Mario, and like...
It's a dungeon crawling RPG kind of game.
Wow.
Yeah. Look it up. It looks fantastic. Another game that I was playing last night and actually was very interested in was Limbo. You ever played that?
Oh, yes. That is a wonderful
Limbo
game.
is... Wow.
See? And there you go.
Yeah.
I completely agree with you on the argument that you don't need, special graphics or high-end. No. That's just a good way to tell a story, or if not, to give an experience. That's a hell of a game. That's a hell of a thing.
Yeah. I haven't beaten it yet, but I'm like 4 chapters away from beating it.
There was another game that I tried out. I cannot for the life of me remember the name, but I think it's pretty popular. It involves this creature walking through the desert. It's nothing but a scarf.
Journey.
There we go. Yes.
Journey.
Have you played Journey?
I played the demo of it, and I thought it was very interesting. I thought it was, the way in which it told a story in a very minimalistic way. I thought was very.
There you go. No need for writing. No need for something. It's purely telling a story based on the mechanics of the game, which previously was very hard.
What's interesting is the people who made that, they did Flower, which somewhat did the same thing.
Yeah.
So
that I also played. For the short amount of time that I had a PS3, that before the Yellow Light of Death, which, sad, but right before I moved here, I got a Yellow Light of Death on my PS3, which, to be honest...
It finally happened.
Yeah. And that was actually one of the first-gen systems, and it finally happened for me. So, yeah.
Welcome to the Yellow Light Death
PS3s. Yeah. Well, anyway, it was not only that game. Dust 514. Have you guys heard of that game?
I've heard of it.
Yeah, I've heard of it.
Okay, it ties into the EVE Online universe, yada, yada, yada. Suffice it to say, definitely give it a try. It is now openly, freely available on the PS3 store. Definitely something you guys want to try, because it is not the shooter you were expecting, but it is the shooter that you want. Not to mention the fact that I'm going to be on the other end of that because I play EVE Online, and I already hire a few of the mercenaries to, die for me. And that's literally the entire premise of the game. You are a bunch of botsers, and I am a very dapper gentleman throwing money at you so you die in my name. But it works. It works. But something like that it comes from a company, CCP, that, they're not a AAA title. They don't make millions. They've had to let go of it. But they have a ideology that comes from an indie developer with the backbone of a AAA title that has enough money to, save itself from bankruptcy. And that's when you get something like that, something that's freely available and open. And yes, they're willing to not care about profit as long as people are in the game having fun. And that's where we get to the question of profitability in larger AAA titles.
We'll look at League of Legends, free to play, but it really entices you to pay more.
Yeah. And there you go. We're no longer living in a market when it comes to PCs of buying a game and then playing it. We're living in a market of getting addicted to a game by playing the free version and then being tricked, being seduced into paying.
Yeah, I've known friends have spent well over $200 on League of Legends.
See, and that only happens now because before, no one would think, hey, I'm going to pay $200 now to play this game.
$200 over the course of a few years.
Yeah. I mean, I can say I've paid over $200 over the course of a couple of years on EVE Online because it's one of the last few subscription titles. But it's a game that is worth paying for because if you play it right, it is something that is rewarding. It is something that you cannot find anywhere else. And thankfully, we are in a generation, we're living in the time that, a good game, sometimes rare, but it's a good game and it's something that's going to grab you. And that's, that's the one protection against another crash, and that's the one protection for indie developers compared to AAA title developers.
Fair enough. We've butchered that topic.
Moving on.
Well, I guess we'll have to end it here because this is getting pretty damn long.
Yes, it is.
Yes, but we'll have you on a future episode? Yes?
That's up to you. It all depends on whether you call me or not.
We shall never call you again.
Well, then it's your loss. I'll just have to scream at my, screen whenever I see one of your YouTube videos.
Well, you'll see it, but then you'll write. It's better to hear you talk than it is to read.
Which, by the way, thanks everyone who has started following my friend here. As you can tell, this podcast is very interesting. Provides a different viewpoint.
Definitely. It's not the corporate dick suckers that just get paid to say nice things.
Don't we have an argument we need to settle between, somebody liking Destructoid and, not liking Gawker here? Or, I don't know. Kevin?
Oh, okay, fine. What is your opinion of IGN?
No, I stopped caring what IGN has to say when clearly you can see that they're being paid for reviews at this point.
Yeah.
Okay, game trailers.
No. I'm sorry, I don't even need to say anything. Just no. They are now living in an era where just saying the name game trailers is the same as saying Ubisoft. That's it.
Okay.
IGN is EA and game trailers is Ubisoft.
Okay, well,
which, don't get me wrong, I love Ubisoft and, Watch Dogs. It's basically person of interest, the video game, but it's still freaking interesting.
Oh yeah, definitely is caught
that
my
one
eye.
looks fascinating.
Okay, then Destructoid.
Meh.
Why?
With a capital M, lowercase e, and a capital H.
Okay, why?
I'm sorry, but I've read it a few times. I've read the reviews. I've read their editorials. They still don't. They haven't hooked me. Some of their reviews are pretty even-handed. Sometimes you get a diamond in the rough, but most of the time you see this consistent bias that, once again, it's impossible not to have a bias, but it kind of takes away from the piece. For example, here in one of the pieces that was linked, the Etsai 3 CEO says Valve asked him to build the Piston console. Yes, the majority of what he states in the beginning of the piece is true, but first, linking Kotaku immediately gets you minus 3 points. I'm sorry. Linking Kotaku in any part of your story means that you're not actually, going for direct from the tap. You're just, basing yourself off of Gawker, which anyone who bases themselves off of Gawker is already lost to humanity.
Okay.
I'm sorry, it's just that Gawker is although I liked what they were trying to do in the beginning, you kind of find yourself reading articles that are already biased pro-Apple on everything.
Of course.
Yeah.
And you can understand that they're pro-Apple because that's what they use, that's what they're used to. And even now, more of them are starting to turn to Android. I shit thee not. If you read some of the articles, a lot of the Gawker staff is turning to Android now. It's sad, really, when you can no longer look at something and think, hey, this is an interesting review. I could take this away as an opinion piece rather than, a fact sheet or something from the Dredge Report. No. Instead, this is just the rantings of a fanboy. And that's when you take away from it. That's all you ever can take away from it, because having your own bias is one thing, but then being thrown the bias of another person in your face is not so much an editorial piece, but just, masturbation without the payoff.
Yes. Nothing.
And no.
Well, actually, one article that just caught our eye, and this is going to be the last thing we're going to talk about, and then we're ending this. Crytek says it's impossible for next-gen consoles to beat PCs.
Yeah.
They said PS4 and next Xbox just can't pack $2,000 of tech in one system.
It's true. It's the law of economics.
Exactly.
No matter how fancy you make the system, someone else with $2,000 in their pocket can make something that can run, multiple iterations of Crysis on maximum.
True. I mean, have you seen the GeForce GTX Titan?
I have a friend who's putting himself into debt buying 2 Titans.
Oh my god, I want to meet that person. I want to be able to see that thing running.
His name is Rubas. Hi, Ruby Poo. He's a friend from Sweden. He's probably going to be listening to the podcast after I tell the folks. And yeah, he's going to put himself into debt just to get a couple of Titans.
That's $2,000 he's going to put into his computer.
Just instead of just buying one and then buying the other one. No. Just on the cards, $2,000.
That is one sweet setup.
Yep. He wants a multi-screen system, obviously, but he doesn't just want he wants the multi-screen system. He wants something that will make your eyes bleed and you will be finishing saying thank you.
Yep. All right. Well, that's it, guys. Is there anywhere people can follow you?
No.
All right. So no stalking Andy.
No, unfortunately. Unless somebody wants me to make a rant video of my own, please post below. And if we get enough profanities, you can hear me say them in the next episode.
Definitely. I mean, Andy's always been a good person to have on our podcast.
Hey, I'm many things, but a good person? Come on.
No, you're good because of what you offer to the topic at hand. I mean, I remember, back in the day, you were going on this whole, theory of the future. And, I mean, you were going beyond what most people's comprehension would be.
I'm a nerd. What do you expect?
Exactly. You should have been on King of the Nerds.
Oh, God, no. No.
No, you see, that show's more like King of the Hipsters.
Yes. Thank you. Kevin, high five from across the internet. That is, I'm sorry, from Manhattan. From Manhattan, we hate hipsters. Ugh.
I don't blame you. I mean, you guys are covered in them.
Yes, they are like a bad case of crabs after a dorm room party where you don't remember where you left your pants. That's just, For anyone who has had to suffer that, I am sorry I brought those horrible memories back.
Yes, and I work in New York City. I know what you're talking about. I know.
It's impossible to get anywhere without being hit by an eye full of...
Just go to Soho.
No, I'd rather not. Honestly, I'd rather not.
All right, well, that wraps it up. Any last words, Kevin?
No.
Any last words, Andy?
Platypus.
Thank you. Well, that's it, guys. Thank you for listening to episode 17. Look out for episode 18. We're definitely on track, definitely doing a good job. Everyone here is awesome. If you want to be on the show, please drop a personal message to myself. And if you qualify, you'll be on the show. So that's it. Take care, guys, and look out for future episodes.